Here's what comics do, especially starting out. They sit down to write jokes, and they start writing like a comedian does. I'm going to write jokes for the stage, for my comedy show. I hate doing air quotes. Anyways, stop doing that, at least for this exercise. Over the last couple of days, I've talked with two different comics. One who emailed me directly through YouTube. I put up my email address. Feel free to use it if you want. At some point, I'm going to be too busy to do this for everybody. And the second one was from a Discord server called it's Stand-Up Comedy Network. I'll put the link in here. Both of them shared their sets with me, some video. I watched them, and then I gave them feedback. One I talked to on the phone, one we messaged back and forth on Discord. Here's what was amazing to watch. Both of these comics had such interesting aspects of their lives that they didn't realize. So they were just writing a simple joke that incorporated that, but they weren't getting to the heart of it. Here's the first example. A comic named Richard Harleman. He has this great look. He has an old-timey flat brim. It's not a cowboy hat, but it almost looks like New Mexico to me. I don't know. He's got these glasses, a thick mustache, and he just looks like an outdoorsy type of throwback guy. Very funny, very likable on stage. He does this bit, or actually it's just a joke. He talks about bringing a woman back to his teepee to have sex, and because he's a comedian, he always has to say what he thinks is funny, so he made a joke while they were in the middle of it. None of it had to do with the teepee. So when I'm talking to him on the phone, I'm like, dude, you lived in a teepee? What is that like? That's like one of the craziest things I've ever heard. How do you find where to buy a teepee? He's like, oh, I met this guy out in the woods. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm just blown away about it. I say, listen, that's what you have to write about. He lives in a van as well. He's got 3 dogs. I'm like, bring us into that world. Start out by just writing down all the facts. Answer any questions that an average person who's never lived in a teepee or even contemplated it would have for you. What happens if it breaks? Like, who repairs it? What made you interested in living in a teepee? Did something force you into that? How did you find this guy out in the woods? What is it like when you bring women over? What's their first impression? Are they terrified? All of that. Why did you stop living in the teepee? He goes, oh, well, I went back to it. I'm like, what? What do you mean you went back to it? There was something that you started living more of a normal life, and you're like, I miss living out on the wide open range in a teepee. I told him, just write the reality of all of that and think about every aspect of living in a teepee and really bring in the feeling of it. He's like, well, what about jokes? I said, no. You don't have to write jokes. If you just talk about that authentically and write about it authentically, the jokes will start to appear. Things that you don't even realize are funny because it's so natural for you, it's so normal for you to be living in a teepee that other people are going to be like, I was. They're going to just start laughing. He said this one thing. He goes, yeah, well, my luck's been turning around. My friend gave me a dead cow, so my dogs and I have been eating on that. And I'm like, what? To most people, being given a dead cow would be a nightmare scenario. But he sees the good part of it, and it's beneficial to him. And, it's so wild to me. That's material nobody will steal because they won't be able to talk about it authentically. That's something that he'll be known for. Do you understand where I'm coming from? And I told him, do not cheapen up any of that by going to Native American stuff like, yeah, I paid the guy for the teepee in wampum, or we smoked a peace pipe after, or any of that type of hacky, stereotypical stuff. First of all, try to stay away from that altogether, but also he doesn't need it. He doesn't need it. And he can go through, after he writes all of this down, the pros and cons of living in a teepee and the benefits of having a dead cow carcass in your yard, and then punch it up, write jokes based on that. But it's so much better than sitting down and going, okay, airline food is bad, or I got dumped yesterday. Talk about living in a teepee. Okay, so the second guy, he has a joke, and it's just a one-off. And I think he does a couple more things about it. But he did estrogen for 3 months. I'm like, what? I've never heard of somebody a man doing estrogen for only 3 months. I'm like, did you back out of transitioning, or did you run out of money? Like, there's so many things to that. Develop that whole thing out. Answer all my questions for that. What made you get on estrogen? What were the changes you saw? What did it feel like when you got off of it and went back to your normal hormonal balance? Like, it's just chock full of interesting information, and that's part of what the audience wants. And when you're talking about such a fertile ground like that, the jokes, again, they're just going to come. If you write out every reason why you decided to do estrogen, why you stopped doing it after only 3 months, what changes you saw in those 3 months, that's magical to me. Because, again, nobody I've ever seen has done a bit about that. And his attitude is very upbeat. I don't even know the answers to some of those questions because he's working on all of it. But that was just such a delightful little thing. Living in a teepee, going on estrogen for 3 months. That makes for great comedy. It sets you apart. Look at your life through the perspective of an outsider. The things that you think are normal may be completely abnormal to me or to the people in the audience with me. So before you start writing jokes about certain things, do Ernest Hemingway's 5-finger exercise. The question to Hemingway was, how can a writer train himself? Hemingway's response, watch what happens today. If we get into a fish, see exactly what it is that everyone does. If you get a kick out of it while he is jumping, remember back until you see exactly what that action was that gave you the emotion, whether it was the rising of the line from the water and the way it tightened like a fiddle string until drops started from it, or the way he smashed and threw water when he jumped. Remember what the noises were and what was said. Here's the important part. Find what gave you the emotion, what the action was that gave you the excitement. Then write it down, making it clear so the reader will see it too and have the same feeling that you had. That's a 5-finger exercise. Try that out with your writing. Be descriptive, put details, list all of the facts, then your opinions, and then go through and really capture those moments that brought out that excitement or that rage or that joy or that depression or whatever emotions you're feeling when you're talking about this. That's where the magic is. That's going to help you be a great comic. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will make another one tomorrow.